For years, K-dramas have given us younger heartthrobs to obsess over. But lately, it feels like the older these men get, the hotter they become. These Korean actors are in their 40s, still ridiculously handsome, incredibly successful, and still single. So, who made our list of the 20 hottest Korean bachelors in their 40s? And more importantly, which one would you happily marry tomorrow? Let's get into it. 20. Kim Soon-ho.
치과 이렇게 육체 중심적인 인간이었어? 나 치과한테 잘 어울릴 만한 책 하나 사줄게. 조르주 바타유의 에로티즘이라고.
조르주
바타유의 에로티즘.
Kim Soon-ho has a smile that could probably ruin your standards for every man you meet afterward. At 40, his face is fairly understated when he's not smiling. Soft jaw, straight nose, serious expression. But the second those dimples appear, his whole face lights up. His eyes practically disappear, and suddenly the man who looked quietly handsome a second ago becomes devastatingly cute. He spent nearly a decade working in theater before television found him, so he arrived on screen already knowing how to hold an audience's attention. Startup turned Han Ji-pyong into one of the most debated second leads in years, with that smile doing a suspicious amount of the heavy lifting. Then Hometown Cha-Cha-Cha turned Chief Hong into a full-blown heartthrob across Asia. Chief Hong is that face with everything stripped off it. Barefoot on a beach, sun-tanned, hair pushed around by the wind, loose linen shirts and trousers rolled to the shin. No expensive tailoring, no dramatic lighting, no styling doing half the work. Just tanned skin, sea light, and those dimples going off every few minutes for 16 episodes. Since then, he's continued moving between television, film, and the stage, most recently leading a Netflix series while still returning to theater between screen projects. And that's the whole problem with Kim Soon-ho. He doesn't need the intimidating jawline, towering physique, or brooding attitude some of the other men on this list have. He just has to smile. 19. Choi Jin-hyuk.
그렇다고 연습 씨 마음이 차갑다는 뜻은 아니니까 오해하지 마시고요. 그런 의미로다가 오해 안 하셨으면은 손 잡아도 됩니까?
네?
If broad shoulders and rolled up sleeves are your weakness, Choi Jin-hyuk is about to make this list very difficult for you. At 187 centimeters, he's wide through the shoulders, solidly built, and has the kind of physique that makes directors mysteriously find reasons for him to take his jacket off. Add the heavy brows and hard jaw, and he can look seriously intimidating, right up until he smiles. Then the whole face softens. He turned 40 in February, making him one of the 2 youngest men on this list. And he's been playing older brothers since he was in his 20s, which might explain why he has that mature, protective leading man energy down to a science. He first caught attention as the older brother in Gu Family Book, before becoming much more widely known as the second lead in The Heirs. Since then, he's taken on everything from emergency couple and tunnel to zombie detective, rarely sticking to one particular type of role. That's a big part of the appeal. Choi Jin-hyuk could have spent his entire career playing the impossibly handsome man in the expensive suit, but he keeps choosing stranger, rougher, and less predictable characters instead. 18. Park Sung-hoon.
너 때문에 내 인생이 이렇게 망가졌는데 그래도 난 노력했는데 왜?
윤성, 이제 그만해. 다 끝났어.
아니가 끝났어.
Is it just me, or does Park Sung-hoon get hotter every time he shows up on screen? At 41, he has that rare combination of pretty boy features, a lean physique, and just enough sharpness to make him properly hot. And those eyes definitely aren't helping. Before television found him, Park Sung-hoon spent 6 years on stage, eventually earning a reputation as one of the standout young actors in Korean theater. Then the glory happened. Jun Jae-joon made him famous, and for a while, practically replaced his real name. That role gave the face its best possible frame. Expensive tailoring, golf wear, hair styled within an inch of its life, and a jaw that catches every light in the room. The camera knew exactly what it had and framed him accordingly, in slow pans and long close-ups. And those eyes do something specific when the smile drops out of them. Big, dark, a little too intense, set slightly wide in a small face. He followed it with Queen of Tears, and then Squid Game put him in completely different styling, and the same features read soft and open instead. That range is the whole reason he works. Park Sung-hoon can look soft and almost boyish when he smiles, then turn cold and unreadable the second the grin disappears. Give him a good suit, a serious expression, and about 5 seconds of screen time, and it's pretty much game over. 17. Lee Jae-hoon.
여성한테 보여주지 말아야 할 세 가지가 있어. 사나운 눈빛, 사나운 말, 그리고 사나운 주먹.
Lee Jae-hoon got hotter by doing absolutely nothing. At 42, he looks better than he did at 32, which is not how any of this is supposed to work. The sharper features, more mature look, and those intense eyes have all come together rather nicely. He's got the sort of face that can make a simple black suit look like a very good decision. He debuted in 2006 through independent film and spent years building his reputation there before television really took notice. Bleak Night and Architecture 101 established him as a serious actor, while Signal made him a household name. Then came Move to Heaven, followed by Taxi Driver, which he has now carried across multiple seasons, and which made him one of the most reliable leading men on Korean television. But what makes him especially attractive is how little he seems to need to do. Lee Jae-hoon can sit completely still, give someone a look, and make an entire scene feel charged. He doesn't need exaggerated expressions or a flashy entrance to command attention. At 42, he's figured out that sometimes the hottest thing a man can do is simply look at the camera like he knows exactly what he's doing. 16. Yoo Yoon-suk.
내가 그렇게 별로예요? 남자로 내가 그렇게 아니에요.
There are men who are simply good-looking, and then there are men who look like they were specifically designed to make you smile back at the screen. Yoo Yoon-suk is definitely the second kind. He's 42 and still has the soft features, the tall frame, and the enormous grin that make him almost embarrassingly easy to like. The smile is doing most of the damage. He made his acting debut at just 18 in Old Boy, in a role most people probably wouldn't recognize him in today. Then Dr. Romantic gave us a sharper Yoo Yoon-suk, confident, ambitious, and ridiculously good-looking in a doctor's coat. Hospital Playlist softened the image again, turning him into the warm, gentle An Jong-won, the kind of handsome that becomes even more attractive once you realize how sweet the character is. And then, when the phone rings came along and reminded everyone that he could still play a completely different kind of hot, colder, more intimidating, impeccably dressed, and carrying enough romantic tension with Chae Soo-bin to keep viewers hooked. And the charm doesn't stop when the cameras do. Yoo Yoon-suk has one of those completely unfiltered laughs where his whole face disappears, and it's probably a big part of why he's so easy to like. He's also a surprisingly good golfer, so apparently being tall, handsome, charming, and successful wasn't enough. 15. Jung Kyung-ho.
애들하면 어디 갈라 그래요?
괜찮아요.
지금만 내자요?
자요. 아주 푹 자요. 걱정하지 마요.
안 돼요 그래도.
괜찮아요.
안 됩니다 진짜 안 돼. 진짜.
Jung Kyung-ho is 42, ridiculously charming, and, after 14 years, back on the bachelor market. He may not be the biggest or most imposing man in this lineup, but he's got something arguably more dangerous: charm. Give him that enormous, warm grin, and suddenly you're paying attention. The lean frame, expressive eyes, playful personality, and effortless sense of humor only make it worse. He's been headlining for years, with standout roles in Prison Playbook and Hospital Playlist. And his appeal has always been slightly different from the classic brooding heartthrob. He can be funny, sweet, awkward, flirtatious, and then suddenly very, very attractive without seeming like he's trying to be any of those things. For 14 years, he was also one of those actors everyone assumed was happily settled. That changed in June, when both agencies confirmed his breakup on the same day, without giving a reason beyond their busy schedules. So now, at 42, Jung Kyung-ho is officially single for the first time in years. And if you've ever watched him turn that smile on, you already know the bachelor market just got a little more interesting. 14. Taegu?
이번에도 그냥 혼자서 다 뒤집어 쓰게요. 정작 책임져야 할 사람들은 지금 코빼기도 안 비추는데 왜 당신이 다 책임을 지려고 해요?
제 영상을 보고 먹었다잖아요. 저도 책임 있어요.
Taegu spent years convincing us he was terrifying, only to discover that the same face could be incredibly seductive. At 42, he's got heavy-lidded eyes, a wiry build, a deep voice, and a permanently serious expression that ought to make him frightening. Put him in a romance, though, and all of those same features turn surprisingly attractive. He spent most of his career playing the kind of men you'd cross the street to avoid. From The Age of Shadows and A Taxi Driver to The Great Battle, Night in Paradise, and Concrete Utopia, he built a reputation on villains, gangsters, soldiers, and other men who rarely had much interest in being charming. Then My Sweet Mobster completely changed the equation. He played a former gangster trying to go straight who falls in love, and suddenly audiences got to see what happens when that forbidding face is paired with awkward sweetness instead of violence. As for marriage, he's actually been pretty open about wanting it. He's talked about settling down warmly and repeatedly over the years. But in 2024, he finally joked that he'd talked about it enough and would stop discussing it. So for now, this striking 42-year-old remains single. And apparently the only thing more unexpected than Tae-gu as a rom-com lead is how badly we want to see him play one again. 13. Lee Jun-hyuk.
별이가 말한 사람이 대표님이었을 줄은.
나도 안지 얼마 안 됐어요. 들어가 봐요. 애 혼자 있는데.
예, 제가 못한 일은.
일단은 아이 생각만 해요, 오늘은.
Lee Jun-hyuk has the kind of face that makes a man in a suit look unnecessarily expensive. At 42, he's tall, lean, and sharply featured, with a long face, straight nose, defined jaw, and slightly narrow eyes that give him that cool, almost untouchable look. Add the perfectly proportioned features and the way he carries himself, and there's something quietly, almost unfairly attractive about him. For most of his career, he stuck to thrillers, action dramas, and serious supporting roles, and he wasn't particularly keen on doing romantic comedies, which made it all the more satisfying when he finally gave one a chance. In Love Scout, he played a single father and secretary who falls for his boss, and suddenly all those sharp features and that controlled demeanor had a completely different effect. After years of watching Lee Jun-hyuk play cold executives, detectives, and calculating men in immaculate suits, seeing him actually flirt was almost a public service. The restrained smiles, quiet confidence, and understated chemistry showed just how naturally his particular kind of handsome works in a romance. 12. Sun Suk-koo.
손 떨던데 드셔. 추앙하는 거야. 먹어.
Sun Suk-koo looks like he couldn't care less whether you find him attractive, and that is exactly what makes him so hot. At 42, he's not polished or conventionally pretty. He has heavy brows, slightly rough features, deep-set eyes, a broad mouth, and a deep voice, all topped off by that permanently unbothered expression. Put it together with his tall, lean frame and slightly disheveled style, and the result is a kind of rugged sex appeal that feels completely effortless. He actually worked as a businessman in the United States before becoming an actor, and that calm, almost detached quality has followed him onto the screen. Be melodramatic and DP made him an actor worth watching, but my Liberation Notes turned Mr. Gu into a national obsession and made Sun Suk-koo a leading man at 38. And it's the least groomed he has ever looked. Rumpled shirts, hair that clearly hasn't been arranged, a permanent 5 o'clock shadow, and that heavy brow sitting low over tired eyes. He looks like a man who has been awake for 2 days and has no intention of explaining why. No suit, no styling, no flattering lighting, and that is the version of him an entire country decided to pay attention to. Since then, the roles have kept coming. Casino, A Killer Paradox, and Mercy for None have all given him variations of that same quiet intensity. He doesn't need to flirt or perform for the camera. A slow look, a low voice, and that completely unreadable expression are usually enough. Sun Suk-koo's entire appeal is that he seems completely unaware or completely unconcerned that he's attractive. Unfortunately for everyone watching, it is working. 11. Sung-hoon.
한 남자가 한 여자에게 이렇게 사랑받을 수도 있구나 하는. 남자라면 질투날 정도의 찬사 아닌가? 이건?
Sung-hoon has the kind of physique that makes a fitted shirt feel less like clothing and more like a plot device. At 43, he's got broad swimmer's shoulders, a narrow waist, a solid chest, and the sort of proportions that make you understand why K-dramas keep finding reasons to put him in sleeveless tops. Then there's the serious face. Strong jaw, straight features, and an expression that somehow makes the whole package even more imposing. Before acting, Sung-hoon was a competitive swimmer, and an injury eventually forced him to give it up. Fortunately for K-drama fans, acting became Plan B. Oh My Venus put him in front of a mainstream audience, My Secret Romance made him a romantic lead, and Are You Human 2 gave him the sort of dual role actors wait years for. More recently, he starred in Perfect Marriage Revenge and Woman of 9.9 Billion. And he's never seemed particularly uncomfortable with the attention his looks bring. After nearly 2 decades of shirtless scenes, he still carries them with the same completely straight-faced confidence. No awkward jokes, no pretending he doesn't know what the camera is doing. Just Sung-hoon looking very good and getting on with the scene. 10. Kim Jae-wook.
좀 재밌는 것 같기도 하고.
몇 대였죠?
5대.
5대요?
50점 나지 않았어요?
If you remember Kim Jae-wook from Coffee Prince, you might remember him as the improbably pretty waffle shop employee. Well, he's 43 now, and that pretty has evolved into something much more dangerous. The face is sharper, the cheekbones more pronounced, the styling better, and the model's confidence is still very much intact. He started out as a model before moving into acting, and that background never really left him. The feline eyes, pale complexion, lean frame, and striking cheekbones give him a kind of beauty that has never been particularly conventional. At 43, those features have only become more defined, giving him an edge that makes him difficult to look away from. After Coffee Prince, he went on to Bad Guy, Voice, The Guest, Her Private Life, and Crazy Love, taking on everything from unsettling villains to romantic leads. He's particularly good at characters who need to be beautiful, but just a little bit strange, which happens to suit his face perfectly. And then there's the fashion. Kim Jae-wook can wear things most other actors wouldn't even attempt and make them look completely natural. The modeling years clearly never left. And when you already have those cheekbones, that frame, and that face, good clothes are almost just showing off. 9. Park Hae-jin.
근무 중 휴대폰 사용 금지. 모릅니까?
네. 근데 그거를 박혜진 씨가 왜...
아직 업무 시간 10분 남았습니다. 퇴근 후 찾으러 오세요.
There is something faintly rude about how good Park Hae-jin still looks at 43. He's tall, absurdly clean-cut, has skin that looks permanently camera-ready, and one of those enormous open smiles that makes him even hotter. 20 years into his career, the man has barely lost a step. Dr. Stranger and Bad Guys got his face known, but Cheese in the Trap made him a phenomenon. And it's where that face got its proper showcase. Soft knitwear, neat hair, skin that looks lit from somewhere inside, and a smile so clean it nearly looks engineered. Everything about him in that drama is symmetrical and warm and slightly too perfect. Big open eyes, straight nose, an easy grin that arrives in full or not at all. He was in his early 30s and looked younger, and a decade later, people still bring the character up as a benchmark. Man to Man followed, and he also built an enormous following in China, giving him a second career that very few of his Korean peers managed to achieve. And then there's the grin. Big, uncomplicated, slightly goofy, and it takes 10 years off him. He's been putting that face on shampoo and cosmetics campaigns for years, and it's easy to see why. At 43, Park Hae-jin still looks like the sort of man a K-drama would introduce as the perfect boyfriend. 8. Lee Joon-gi.
어머니가 자꾸 여지를 주시니까 지원이 노력만 하면 된다고 생각을 해요. 지원이가 그 어떤 기대도 갖지 않게 하세요.
네 처자식 앞에 2번 다시 얼쩡거리지 말라는 소리지.
Lee Joon-gi is 44 and can still stand beside actors half his age and make them look like they're the ones trying to keep up. The face is almost too pretty. Huge eyes, fine features, a slim frame, but there's enough intensity underneath to make the whole thing genuinely hot. He was only 23 when The King and the Clown came out and made him a star almost overnight. The film sold more than 12 million tickets, while My Girl was dominating television at the same time, giving him a rare 1-2 punch of movie and drama success. Korean media even came up with terms like pretty man syndrome and cross-sexual because the vocabulary they had didn't cover what people were looking at. Long hair, pale stage makeup, and those enormous dark eyes doing most of the work. He was 23 and looked like something out of a painting. Fine bones, a jaw that tapers to almost nothing, a mouth that photographs like it was drawn on. The film asked audiences to accept that a king would become fixated on a street performer's face, and nobody found that a stretch. And he never really stopped leading. He's continued taking on action-heavy roles and doing much of his own stunt work, with his taekwondo background clearly coming in handy. He has also kept experimenting with different genres, including a Japanese series and a Netflix film where he'll play his first villain. And there's something oddly endearing about how seriously he remembers where it all started. His Instagram profile picture is still Gongil from The King and the Clown, and he said he keeps it there because he doesn't want to forget how nervous he was at the time. At 44, he's never married, and still looks like the sort of man who could walk into a room and immediately become everyone's problem. 7. Jo Ji-hoon.
이제 눈을 뜨고 귀를 열어라! 백성의 소리를 듣고 이 나라의 참상을 직시하며 무엇이 옳은 길인지.
Jo Ji-hoon is what happens when you give a runway model the proportions of a Korean drama prince and then let him age into the role. He's 44 and stands 187 centimeters, with endless legs, broad shoulders, a narrow waist, and an aristocratic face that somehow makes him look expensive in absolutely everything. The combination is already unfair, but the way he carries himself makes it even more effective. He looks completely at home in his own skin, which is a rarer thing than handsome and a great deal harder to fake. He debuted in 2006 after starting out as a model, and that background is still obvious in the way he moves and wears clothes. Princess Hours made him famous almost overnight and turned him into the go-to Korean prince for a while. But instead of staying trapped in that image, he completely rebuilt himself. Along with the gods, Asura, Kingdom, Hyena, and Jirisan showed just how much range he had beyond the pretty prince role. The Crown Prince became an action star, a villain, a detective, and everything in between, eventually establishing himself as one of the most versatile leading men of his generation. 6. Lee Dong-wook.
내 선물이야. 반쪽이 약해지면 너도 약해진다며.
That jaw, those eyes, that height. Lee Dong-wook really did get an unreasonable amount of luck in one lifetime. At 44, he's still tall, lean, startlingly pale, with a razor-sharp jaw and those slightly cat-like eyes that make him look elegant, mysterious, and, let's be honest, extremely hot. It's a face that stands out immediately, and he has only gotten more striking with age. He became a romantic lead with My Girl back in 2005, but Goblin 11 years later turned him into something closer to a K-drama icon. The Grim Reaper is the single best frame that face has ever been put in. Black hat pulled low, black coat, a red tie against a white shirt, and skin pale enough that the whole thing reads like an ink drawing. The jaw does the rest. That hard line from ear to chin costume designers have clearly been building around for 20 years. Add the height, the narrow frame, and eyes that tilt up at the outer corners, and it stops being a costume and starts being a portrait. Half the internet spent 2017 trying to recreate the silhouette. Since then, he's moved between genres with Tale of the Nine-Tailed, Bad and Crazy, and A Shop for Killers, while also showing a much drier, more playful side as the host of his own talk show. It's easy to forget there's an actual personality underneath that impossibly polished face. 5. Jo In-sung.
이러면 정말 알아?
알 것 같아. 모를 것 같아?
글쎄.
Jo In-sung has kept the face of a heartthrob while acquiring the presence of a man who has been one for 25 years. He's 45, stands 190 centimeters, and has the kind of proportions that make him impossible to miss. Long legs, broad shoulders, a lean frame, and that enormous boyish grin. Put all of that together, and the result is frankly unfair. He's been a leading man since Piano in 2001, going on to Something Happened in Bali, The Classic, and A Frozen Flower. More recently, Moving introduced him to a whole new generation of viewers and reminded everyone that Jo In-sung still has the kind of screen presence that can carry a major production. And despite spending most of his adult life as one of Korea's biggest stars, marriage still hasn't happened. He's joked that he can't tell whether he's choosing not to get married or simply failing to. His mother has apparently been much less subtle, once telling him he needs a child because a child eventually becomes a friend. His response? He jokes with his friends that he'll probably be the first one ending up in a retirement home. 4. Kang Dong-won.
내가 당신이 필요했어요. 내가 같이 떠나고 싶었어요.
Kang Dong-won is 45, and he still looks like someone designed him instead of someone who was born. The tiny head, long neck, broad shoulders, endless frame, and impossibly sharp features are already an unreasonable combination. Then you notice that the face seems to work from absolutely every angle, and suddenly handsome doesn't quite cover it. He studied industrial engineering and started out as a model before moving into acting. Temptation of Wolves made him a phenomenon in 2004, and he followed it with Duelist, Secret Reunion, A Violent Prosecutor, Ilong, Peninsula, and Broker, working with acclaimed director Hirokazu Koreeda. That first film is where the country got a proper look. 23 years old, shaggy hair, school uniform, walking through rain under an umbrella, and that head-to-body ratio doing exactly what it does. The tiny head, the long neck, the shoulders, the legs. Nothing about the scene needs dialogue, and it doesn't really have any. 22 years later, it's still one of the most replayed moments in Korean cinema, and it is purely a looking situation. But the mystery is part of the appeal. Kang Dong-won rarely gives interviews, keeps his private life extremely private, and doesn't use social media the way many of his peers do. You almost never get to see him in ordinary, off-duty mode, so the image stays slightly out of reach. And maybe that's why the effect has lasted for so long. At 45, Kang Dong-won still has the strange, almost unreal quality that made people stare at him in the first place. 3. Kim Nam-gil.
좋은 말로 할 때 나오세요. 응? 큰 소리를 내야 말을 듣나? 빨리 나오라고!
Kim Nam-gil has reached the age where every year seems to make him more attractive. At 46, he can look forbidding, genuinely beautiful, and completely boyish within a single scene. That enormously expressive face has only gotten stronger with time, while the heavy shoulders and solid build give him the sort of weathered, masculine appeal that most actors spend their careers trying to manufacture. Bad Guy and Queen Seondok made him a major star, but it was Bidam and Queen Seondok that really made him unforgettable. Then came 2 years of mandatory military service at the height of his popularity, which many assumed would derail his career. Instead, he returned and kept building an even stronger filmography. The Fiery Priest, Through the Darkness, Island, and Song of the Bandits have all shown different sides of him, from action hero to quiet investigator to outright menace. He also runs a nonprofit that he's been involved with for more than a decade, adding a surprisingly thoughtful side to that rugged image. And he really does seem to be aging in the right direction. The features have gotten stronger, the presence more confident, and the ruggedness more pronounced. 2. Gong Yoo.
답하러 나왔잖아. 이제 그만하고 싶어.
뭘요?
선택할 수 있다고 생각했던 생각.
Gong Yoo has been a heartthrob for so long that at this point, handsome is basically part of his job description. He's 47, and the broad shoulders, dimples, warm eyes, and that open, unguarded smile are all still intact. If anything, 20 years of K-drama fame have only made him more attractive. Coffee Prince made him a household name in 2007, but Train to Busan and Silenced showed that he was capable of much more than the charming romantic lead. Then came Goblin in 2016, one of the biggest K-dramas ever made, which turned him into an international star and gave him another generation of fans. Even those few minutes in Squid Game as the recruiter turned into a talking point of their own, and it's almost entirely a suit-and-face situation. Immaculate navy tailoring, hair parted and set, clean-shaven, unlined, that warm crease at the corners of the eyes every time he smiles. Broad shoulders filling the jacket properly, not a thread out of place. He is comfortably the best-dressed man in that subway station and the most reassuring-looking person in it. And that is precisely the point. And that is the part that lasts. Nothing about Gong Yoo feels overly calculated. He's broad without being bulky, polished without looking vain, and disarming without seeming like he's trying to charm you. At 47, he's the heartthrob who made 20 years look like nothing at all. 1. Song Seung-hoon.
아, 까먹었어요? 아니 뭐 나 놀리는 거예요? 그것도 아닌 뭐 신종 사기 뭐 이런 건가?
아니 그래도 뭔가 좀 익숙하다거나 아니면 뭐 필이 온다거나 아니면 저기 가족 같다거나. 어?
Song Seung-hoon is 49, and he's still the blueprint for the Korean romantic lead. The square jaw, symmetrical features, solid build, and unmistakable leading man presence that made him a heartthrob in the early days of the Korean wave are all still there. 25 years later, he's kept the exact qualities that made him famous without looking stuck in the past. He started out as a jeans model, which makes perfect sense when you look at him. Autumn in My Heart made him a major star in 2000 and one of the early faces of the Korean wave, followed by Summer Scent and East of Eden. He's kept working consistently ever since, through Dr. Jin, Black, Voice 4, and The Player 2. And the face has barely changed. Put a photo from Autumn in My Heart next to one from now, and the differences are mostly a slightly stronger jaw, a more mature presence, and much better tailoring. He's been asked about marriage for roughly 25 years, but these days he seems to have quietly stopped entertaining the question, which is exactly why he's number 1. At 49, Song Seung-hoon isn't trying to recreate the heartthrob he was 25 years ago. He simply never stopped being one. 20 men, all in their 40s, and not a single wedding between them. Which one surprised you? And who did I miss? Because I know there are more. Let me know in the comments, and if you want the ones who did get married, click the video on your screen.